Right. Hello here.
Let's click through. Good morning, everyone. I will go ahead and go through our preamble with the hopes that our chair is here and ready to start the meeting by the time we're through that. So this is the May 1st, 2025 meeting of the Historic Ohio City Design Review Advisory Committee. I apologize in advance for any, technical issues or network connectivity issues we have. Our office is in the midst of getting a light remodel. So they kicked us out and then they told us we had to come back, but we don't have networks or phones or anything like that. So trying to do this out of our conference room, and last meeting I had kind of dropped me off at some point. So we have Jessica's computer is on and plugged into everything. So hopefully the meeting won't end, but if I disappear for a second, that's why. To go over the virtual meeting regulations and procedures, actions during the meeting will be taken by roll call vote. Recusal due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to the start of any presentation. The recused committee member will then leave the meeting for the duration of the case discussion. The chair will call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call of the committee. The administrator will introduce the first project. The meeting will then be turned over to the applicant to proceed through their presentation. Each presentation should be completed prior to questions and comments from the committee. Once the presentation is concluded, the administrator will provide background information and read any public comments received if applicable. The committee will then begin deliberations and project review. Please use the raise hand feature if you'd like to speak. After deliberations and review concludes, the committee will render its recommendation and or motion. The applicant may leave the meeting at any point after their project review is complete. All projects will follow the same format until all projects are heard by the committee. Once projects are heard, the chair will call for any committee or administrative reports. And after all reports have been heard, the chair will adjourn the meeting. Regarding community comments, any and all community members may provide their written comments, thoughts, or questions regarding projects presented to the committee. Community members may also telephone their comments or questions to the committee administrator. All comments, thoughts, or questions must be submitted to the committee administrator no later than 48 hours prior to the start of the meeting. Public comment received after the deadline will not be heard by the committee. Public comment will be collected by Landmark staff and sent to the committee members for review prior to the scheduled meeting. The Landmark staff will also summarize any received comments during the meeting. The applicant of the project is under no obligation to answer any community questions. Community members are invited to attend the Design Review Advisory Committee meetings, but there will be no open public comment period. During the Design Review Guidelines, all projects are being reviewed using the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation and are being considered for the issuance of a certificate of appropriateness. All projects are considered on a case-by-case basis. Presentations were received and distributed to committee members for review prior to the scheduled meeting. Changes to the presentation after confirmation of receipt by Landmark staff are not shown. The Historic Ohio City Design Review Advisory Committee makes recommendations to the Cleveland Landmarks Commission. These recommendations are not final actions. Depending on the scope of the project, submissions may be approved administratively or will need to be reviewed by the Cleveland Landmarks Commission. If that's the case, projects will be scheduled at the next available commission meeting after an action is taken. Here we have the Secretary of the Interior standards. You can always go back to this slide if anyone has any questions about those or their applicability. It looks like
No.
we still are missing our chair and our.
Dan, I just received a text from the chair that she is running late due to an issue with one of her children at school.
Okay. I guess in that case, it looks like our vice chair is also not here. Alex, would you mind stepping in as acting chair until Madam Chairwoman can join us?
Certainly. All right, we'll call the May 1st, 2025, Ohio City Design Review meeting to order. Dan, you can call the roll.
All right, Ms. Anderson,
Here.
Ms. Flaherty, Mr. Frondorf,
Here.
Ms. Land,
Here.
Mr. Miller,
Here.
Mr. Persons, Mr. Talley, Mr. Trevisano,
Here.
and Ms. Marinucci. And Mr. Chairman, it does appear we have quorum, so call our first project, which is case HOC 25-13 at 1777 West 31st Place in the Ohio City Historic District. You guys reviewed this and tabled it on April 3rd, 2025. In the interim, I did go out and meet with the homeowner and contractor on site, and we had a discussion about potential ways that they could modify their scope of work to be in better keeping with the Secretary of the Interior standards, and they're here to present an updated proposal. So with that, Cindy, are you on the call here?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, I
Yeah,
am.
if you want to walk through your presentation, just let me know when you'd like me to advance through the slides, please.
Okay, thank you. I'm Cindy Amato with Joseph's Home Improvement, and I'm here with the homeowner of 1777, Mr. Tom Wintering. And we're here and we met out with Daniel, and we decided that, we are willing to compromise as much as we have to, but if we could possibly do the three sides of the home with the vinyl, with the casings, and we will keep the same exact sizing as far as the slats go. We will keep it at the double 4, or it's double 4.5, I think. And then as far as the trim goes, we would keep that also the same size as the casings that are around the windows now. I guess the windows will replace, some of them were at one time, but the windows in the front were not replaced on the first floor. We want to omit the complete front of the porch until Mr. Wintering decides what he's going to do with the front porch. He doesn't know. It's got to be maybe rebuilt later down the road, but we want to keep everything the same that we did, with the corners to be the alternate color as the trim, and the house to be the seagrass color. It's from top peak. He would like to do it shake on the front of the house, which is the same color as the house, and the trim they still they'll still do it. It's got a lot of different variations as far as the breaks in it. So my guys definitely can do it the same exact way that the house is. They have a break that can make the different bends in it. And then the trim around the window would be the same, but he wanted to do that in the shake of the same color. If he can't, they said that they wanted it to just be the siding. We thought maybe just the siding, and they said maybe an alternate color. We really didn't want to do that, but I mean, if that's the case, we would. But we did drive around after leaving the home when we went to meet Mr. Masson out there. And we thought that, if he had to do the scallop, that we would add the scallop instead of the shake. But, we did order shake to begin with because that's what we thought we were going to be able to do. But if we had to do the scallop, he would just do the scallop. And then on the second part of underneath that is another part of the house. It's above the roof where the porch is, and that has the 2 windows. We would like to still case out those 2 windows with the trim, and if that had to be a different color, we would do that a different color. But we're just open to suggestions.
All right. Does that conclude your presentation?
Pardon me?
Does it conclude our presentation?
Oh.
I think this is Tom, the homeowner. I just want to jump in and add
I'm excited to talk to you all and get your perspectives on this. As someone who is a lifelong Clevelander, if you didn't read my note last time, I'm really passionate about helping to build up this area. I think this is such a unique street in particular, and the more that I can do, I think to kind of maintain the vision that I had in mind, which I think is in keeping with the aesthetics of the street, and also with the mission of this board. I'd love to do that. And also kind of I shared this last week or a couple weeks ago when we met in person, but I also would love to kind of better understand this committee's rationale behind kind of having separate materials on the sides and back versus the front. So I think that's where Cindy is saying we'd love to stick as much as possible to the spirit of our original design, but of course we're willing to compromise, and especially after hearing this committee's thoughts on kind of the why behind some of the suggestions made. So yeah, I'm excited to hear and give this committee's design perspective.
So it's your intention, if I understand your presentation, to keep the wood material on the front, but you'd like to do vinyl on the other three sides. Is that accurate?
Just on the bottom on the first floor.
Yeah, so the porch, as you can probably see from the pictures, needs some work. But at this point, I'm not totally certain exactly what I'm going to do there, and I haven't found a contractor to take care of it. And so, in speaking with Daniel a couple weeks ago, he mentioned that it might just make sense to hold off on doing anything underneath the porch until we've satisfied that design. And so the intent here is to make the front and sides as uniform as possible, but also recognize that there are some limitations logistically in terms of when certain things get done. So does that make more sense?
Can I jump in and clarify to Alex's question? It sounds like your current idea today is to leave the front facade alone, but I think you mentioned also wrapping the window casing trim.
Yes.
Okay. And potentially adding either a shake or a scallop siding on
very
top
top.
of in the gable.
Just on the top peak. Just on the top peak.
Okay, so the front facade would be wood clapboard on the first and second story. The second story windows, and you can clarify if the first floor window casings are all also going to be wrapped in trim, and then potentially adding on top of the wood gable siding also this scallop or shake of, I'm not sure what kind of material that's going to be. Just to kind of clarify, just this front facade.
It's a vinyl. Well,
Okay.
we had said maybe we wouldn't wrap the windows on the first floor, but I mean, on the porch, but I mean, we can very easily. This way, that at least is all done.
I think also just to add on to that, so the second and third floor, I mean, ideally, I know we submitted this design in the spirit of compromise. Ideally, we keep it the same materials, the sides and back. And the reason I say that is my concern with mixing materials is obviously the longevity and color is going to differ between those materials. And so the last thing that I want, particularly given how close to the street it is and how obvious those differences would be over time, the last thing I want is for the front to very clearly stand out as different from the sides. And so that's where ideally we would keep to the same materials, that same vinyl, but we submitted this as kind of the compromise if the committee felt that we needed to not do vinyl on the front. So
Yeah, I think keeping wood material on the front is essential. I don't recall us ever approving vinyl on the front. And because the north face of the house, the side face, has a driveway between you and your neighbor to the north, and that's very visible, that would also, in my opinion, need to remain wood. The back and the side to the south, which has very little visibility, I think there could be some flexibility there. But for the public facing sides, no vinyl material should be on at least those two sides. Ideally, no sides, but I think a compromise could be reached on the east and south sides.
We're saying just to do two. So you're just saying just to do two sides of the house?
No, you can do all sides, but not all sides in vinyl, and certainly not vinyl on the front street-facing side or the side to the north.
And can I just ask a bit of a clarification on the why behind that? And the reason I said it is as you probably are aware, siding is quite expensive to begin with, but once you get beyond vinyl and start looking at hardy or wood, that's where it just shoots up. And very candidly, I just don't have the funds to be able to completely tear down and reside in cedar. And given the number of other homes on this street and in the area that have a mix of hardy board, aluminum, vinyl in many cases, I guess my question is, what is the rationale behind this insistence on using wood on the front and sides, especially as we look to build up the area and try to make it something that someone can reasonably afford to maintain long term. Speaking as someone who, well, I don't think I could reasonably afford that cost, and the alternative being letting it sit as is.
Margaret, I don't know if you want to take this one.
Yeah, I'd like to ask, I'll answer first. So our guidelines are the Secretary of the Interior standards from the National Park Service. And like they start with repair when possible, and then if not possible for repair, replace in kind. That is the guideline. So if the house were constructed with vinyl siding, then we'd be having a different conversation about that replace in kind. And I guess my question is going to go back to the repair. And I apologize, I was not at the meeting when you first presented. Is it possible to do repair on the existing wood, or has that been determined to be rotted or
Yeah, it's been determined to be rotted. It's just absent entirely. So for context, I purchased this house back in September of last year, and the previous seller held onto it for decades. My understanding is it was a family home that they have owned since essentially the 50s. And the last owner kind of let it go to disrepair, which is unfortunate. And so after getting several different contractors' views or perspectives, it was determined that all of the wood on the sides, in the back and the front, actually, also in many cases, is rotted and would need to be fully replaced.
So I agree with Alex. Our typical charge is anything that's public facing to approach with that repair or replace in kind. That is the guideline. We do consider the vinyl when it's not economically feasible and on the less visible sides.
Right. Well, that's why we're saying to do the three sides and the peak in the front because it's up so high. Any wood that needs to be replaced, like around the window casings or, a couple panels here and there, but just like on the window casings to cover those, and then the peak, and then the front of the house, we would just leave that alone until he decides what he's going to do with the porch.
So I think that since the peak is, in front of the house, I think that material should be wood. And then if there's such deterioration, is really covering the deteriorated trim the best approach, or should that be replaced so that it's actually fully repaired?
No, anything, well, we can't nail, of course, to anything that's rotted. So any wood like around, sometimes it's just like a windowsill or a little bit. Of course,
so
I cut it out.
Yeah, so why wouldn't that just be repaired with wood and then, on the front?
we would, but then he would have to repair it and then he'd have to have it painted again. So then he'd have
Right.
worse, he's, well, that's on the front. I mean, the front he wants to really just leave alone for right now. We just want to do the 3 sides and the top, very top peak because it was up so high, and cover the wood on the top gable was really, it was fine, and the window casing seemed fine. It was replaced, obviously the window was replaced on the 2 front peaks, like not, I don't know when, but they look like they're pretty new, and they just like left the exposed wood. So we just want to cover the casings, and then, and then as far as the casing goes on the rake boards on the front, just do the front top peak and do the 3 sides. And then when he's ready to do the first lower floor with the porch, then he'll deal with that and the part above the porch.
I think what Margaret and myself, and I imagine my colleagues on this committee are saying, is that you can't put vinyl in any form on the front or the north side of the house.
And I guess returning to your statement, not yours. I'm so sorry. I'm forgetting the councilwoman's name, but the points around the economic hardship. I totally hear you on the spirit of sticking to the repair, replace, and like kind. Just candidly, I don't think it's feasible for me to be able to do the wood. And so I look to this committee to hopefully provide some recourse or some option that would be viable, because I'm also candidly very nervous because, as I said, the previous owner left a few places where there are just holes. So something needs to be done for the viability of the structure of the house. But I'm just not in a financial position right now to afford replacing or repairing large sections with cedar.
And we're not
Which is why-
unsympathetic. We're not
Also
unsympathetic, but that's
and
the
the cost
compromise.
effective.
Just from a construction standpoint too, I'll also just suggest to maybe consider something other than cedar. I have a home really similar to yours, like really, really similar to yours, and we had to reside a large portion of the back of our house, and we used Paulownia, which is similar, like weather-resistant wood that's fast growing and is way more affordable than cedar. I would never dream of siding my house in cedar. That is like really expensive. That would give me an economic hardship too. But there's other options like Paulownia, and I like just kind of reiterating, I guess just like kind of summarizing a major issue that I have is that I'm not seeing in this presentation where there is siding that's so damaged that can't be repaired. Like if there are holes, like I would be interested to see those, and maybe city staff can help us on this committee better understand like how much rotten wood is there? Is there so much rotten that it does require kind of a full building side replacement?
No,
Otherwise, like it's so common. Everyone just scrapes away the loose paint carefully and repaints the wood. That's just like what
right, but
everyone
then,
does. But thank you.
right, but, and we realize that, but just scraping and painting isn't making it any, down the road, all you're going to see is still, when you still paint. I mean, I painted over houses before, it still looks very weathered. I mean, it doesn't, whether you replace it or not, it's not smooth, it's not a clean look. It's just, going up close, it's just painted.
The charm of
If
a 100-year-old
Yes,
house.
that's what I was going to say. I believe they call that character. And I just wanted to jump in as city staff who actually did go out to the house. The siding is there are a lot of spots where clearly there is a board that probably isn't going to take paint anymore. So there might be a few board replacements. You can see some in that front elevation there. Overall, I would say, the siding is not in bad condition. I've, personally repaired and painted siding in much worse condition. A little bit of Minwax wood hardener and Bondo. Just takes a lot of elbow grease, but that is, I guess, part of owning an old home. It's kind of a commitment you make. So I don't see a need for a wholesale replacement of all the siding.
Can I suggest that the applicant go back to the drawing board, as it were, and to reconsider these options? Because if we take a vote, I don't think your proposal is going to pass.
So what if we just left out the whole front of the house and just did the 3 sides?
No, listen, we can't approve vinyl on the north side of the house. We have a charge, we have to follow it.
So you want them to do 2 sides of the house and then paint 2 sides of the house?
No.
It sounds
If
like
you're
it.
looking-
And I appreciate the committee's suggestions around alternative materials and also kind of finding ways to replace. Yeah, I understand. I'm somewhat limited here, and I hear you, Daniel, on the point about owning an old home. I'll just be really transparent and honest. When I bought the house, I wasn't aware of the historic district, and the previous seller actually marked that it wasn't in a historic district, which I understand that's my obligation to check that. So I suppose I didn't fully understand the limitations, the homeowner limitations in an area like this when I bought, and I'll take this committee's thoughts and try to follow them.
Thank you. Would someone like to make a motion to table?
Sure, I'll make a motion to table.
We have a second?
Second.
Dan, you want to call the roll?
All right, Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Frendorf,
Yes.
Ms. Land,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
and Mr. Tripasano.
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman, the motion passes unanimously. Yes, Cindy, we'll reach out to you guys about getting you on the next schedule if you want to talk and discuss other options. Happy to do so. And yeah, I would recommend checking out that product that Mr. Tripasano referenced.
Dan,
I'll just repeat it again. Paulownia.
Polonia.
Paulownia, yeah.
Dan, I have to step away for a call with the court on one of my matters, but I will be back. In the event I'm not back in time to formally note it, I am recusing on the hotel project.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll be right back.
And it looks like our Madam Chairwoman has joined us now.
Perfect.
Unless she
Sorry,
needs a
guys.
moment to get settled. I didn't see right when you hopped in, but
No, I saw the last few minutes, but
okay.
I didn't see most of the conversation of that one. But I am here. I apologize. I had an issue with school that had to be taken care of.
Know how that goes. Lots of fun.
Yeah.
So we are on our second agenda item, which is case HOC 25-18, 1833 West 28th Street in the Ohio City Historic District. Proposed renovation. I believe we have, I'm not sure if it's the homeowner or I think it's the homeowner here that's with us. Alyssa Melendez, are you on the call? Okay. I've got your presentation up and I can click through it. Just let me know when you want me to advance slides. I think this applicant did submit some additional information like yesterday afternoon that is not included in this, but I think it's detail that could be kind of provided verbally with assurances that staff will have all the details in front of them if you guys decide to make make a motion to move this forward. So, Alyssa, yeah, just let me know when you want me to advance slides, please.
Okay, yeah, you can go ahead. Okay, so I live at am the homeowner for 1833 West 28th Street. It is a duplex, kind of on separate floors. So the first floor is its own 2-bedroom unit, and the second floor is its own 2-bedroom unit. There is also a unfinished attic attached to the second floor unit, and so I am looking to have that finished to add not a third unit to the house, but add additional living space to the second unit. And so this will essentially be like a master suite. So it'll have a bedroom, bathroom, and a washer dryer area in this unit. And then, yeah, so that's kind of like an overview of the project. You can move forward to see some pictures. This is kind of like the location of the house. It's on West 28th, kind of near like Dave's a little bit by like J and West 28th on that intersection. If you move forward, this next map just kind of shows like a higher view of it. It's that blue house with the arrow pointing to it. You can move forward. So here are some current images of the exterior of the house. So you can, yeah, kind of see like the first and second floor units. And then it's kind of against an alley. And you'll kind of note in the first picture here, it shows like a window kind of going into the third floor. There are currently just 2 windows going into it, that like front one, and then you can kind of see it near the top of this like back photo of the house, kind of like the back window. So those are the 2 like exterior windows for that. We can move forward. This was the documents I was looking at said to include like street view, so you can kind of see what like the street around it looks like. There's like this apartment building across the street, and then yeah, just we can move forward. Just some history about this house. According to the records, it was built in 1900, and it's been used as a residential home. It's currently a duplex with the 2 units, 1831 and 1833 West 28th Street. And then, like I mentioned, the modifications proposed are modifying the upper unit. Next slide. So here's kind of some pictures of the space as it stands right now. I think there were previously this beginnings of building like a 2-bedroom space up here. But yeah, it's very much like not finished. There's the furnace for the second floor unit is up there, along with all the ductwork for that. And then there's some basic like lighting and electricity up there already. But no insulation or no anything else besides really that. You can kind of see in the one picture the like vent pipe for like the plumbing is going through there as well. There's currently gas up there, gas line for the furnace, but there is also no water line up there. So that will need added for the bathroom. Next slide. Just more pictures showing different views. Next slide. So these are more pictures kind of the window because there is one exterior change that will happen as a result of this, and that's to this front-facing window. And so this is kind of how it currently looks from the inside of the attic. And then if you go to the next slide, I believe I had pictures of the exterior of the window. And so I worked with like an architect to do drawings for the finished attic space, and he had proposed that we needed to make this window bigger, partly because of, I think, like code in terms of like floor square footage and then like actual like light, natural light square footage. And so the proposal is to make it 1.5 feet taller, keeping it the same style window. And so the additional information that I had added to this was just details about like what the size of the current window is. The current one is 2 feet, about 2 feet and 4 inches by 4 feet and 8 inches. And the new window would be 3 feet and 10 inches by 4 feet and 8 inches. And then I had also added specific details about the materials that would be used for this. So I kind of looked into what the current window is. It's a Geldwin, like, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, wooden window. And we can't see it in these photos, but it had like white wood on the inside, and then it's this mesa red exterior color. And so the proposal for this in making it taller would be to virtually keep it the same like style, like keep it the same color, keep it like a sliding window like this, just a taller size, and then having the trim around it be, trying to make it look as close as possible to the current trim, and the same color. The house was just painted last summer, and so I still have like the paint samples for the color for all of this trim and everything. So we'll have it match and look virtually the same, just taller to fit the code requirements. And so I think this was kind of why this project needed to come before the design review committee, was more so for this window. And so because this is an exterior change, and in terms of like the interior details and the changes for that, I have briefly kind of included those in this presentation, but they aren't as much focused on. But we can move on to the next slide. So this is kind of like the site plan. No changes to the building structure really and how it's laid out, but you can just kind of see like a high level view of the site and the sides of the building. And we can move to the next slide. Next slide. This is just kind of the plan for the attic and the architect drawings for that space. So you can kind of see it's an open space, kind of bedroom area. And there's a lot more details on this. I included the full drawings at the end of this presentation if we need to look at any of them, look at it more in depth. But yeah, I worked with like a licensed contractor who's worked on many homes in the Ohio City and Lakewood area, many older homes, to architect renovations like this. And so, right, it's adding the bathroom here, the bedroom. There is going to be a loft area too, kind of. You can't really see it on this drawing, but it'll be above the bathroom, that half of the building, of the room. And then there'll be some reconfiguring of the ductwork to maximize the space as well. Next slide. This is just a drawing of a change to the second floor, moving the ductwork, removing the return vent in the ceiling closer to the wall, just to maximize space efficiency. So that's kind of the only change there on the second floor. You can kind of see green where it currently is. And then that black area is kind of where it's going to be moved. Next slide. This is just kind of the changes in the different areas that we already talked about. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. This was stuff about the material list. I wasn't really sure what all needed included here. The one document said like include site furnishing, lighting, and signage as part of the project, but since there aren't really exterior modifications besides the window, there aren't necessarily those. In terms of like the indoor furnishings, those aren't necessarily finalized yet, but will be pretty standard attic house finishing materials with carpet for the living area, tile for the bathroom, and just basic furnishings. The window, right, will be placed with similar wooden sideways double hung window, and the trim around will match the current design and paint. So the only distinguishable difference would be the taller window. Next slide. Cool. And I will say with the window too, and the additional information I sent yesterday, I looked into like the Geldwin windows and found like a potential one that wouldn't kind of match the new sizing requirements and also match the current window in terms of the colors. And so I just included like the model number and information about that like specific window, but otherwise that's kind of all I had. There are more slides on here about the drawings, but yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a clarification question. In the documents, it was labeled as like a double hung window installed sideways. Is that the intention of the application?
I think the intention when I found the specific model was actually doing a slider window from Geldwin. I think makes more sense because we're going to keep it sliding like that. And so, yeah, the specific model was the Geldwin W5500 2-panel clad wood horizontal slider window.
Okay, thanks. I was concerned. I would, as an architect, not recommend installing a double hung window sideways, but a slider application is obviously designed to be in that orientation, so that would make more sense. I'm not sure that I have any issue with the window growing in size to meet egress code. I think that makes sense. I think it would look more appropriate probably as a single double hung window, like in just modifying the opening to match that, but I'm not sure if there's like a physical constraint or if it's a material constraint. Not wanting to disrupt so much of the existing material could be the consideration there, but I don't have opposition to this, effectively same window growing in size.
I wondered, is it possible to consider a casement? I don't have opposition to the window opening being bigger. I just know that sliders can have a lot more problems just because the debris, dirt, ice, everything has a more opportunity to build up in there. And I just think a casement would also be more historically appropriate, but then does that meet, I'm not an architect, so does that meet the code requirements?
To answer your question, most casements, well, I mean, it depends on the overall dimension, but typically casements are a good alternative to a slider or a double hung because you can achieve the opening required with one panel of the window versus half the panel of the window, if that makes sense. They are more expensive. I don't know how than a double hung typically, but I don't know how that equates to a slider from a cost standpoint.
Yeah, I'd be open to considering a different window type The casement, it'd be like the same size. It just the way it opens is different rather than a slider. It like opens out, right?
Mhm. It could open out or in depending on. And I wouldn't change my vote. I mean, or withhold approval based on that. I just wonder if it could be a consideration.
Yeah, I can
Mark,
look into it and see.
are you talking about one large casement window or like a pair of
No,
casements?
a pair.
Two pairs.
Yeah.
Okay, a pair of casements. Okay, that's gotcha.
Dan, is it possible? It sounds like maybe the property owner sent you a model number for the window. Is it possible to, is that something that can be Googled and shared on the screen?
Um, Not from where I've got kind of limited tech
Okay,
today.
no problem.
Is that, I guess, yeah, if she could share that model number again, maybe people could look it up on their own.
And
Google
then
that
just
on their
to
own.
finally confirm also, it sounds like all the material is going to be a like for like replacement. So when that exterior window casing grows, it looks like it's currently wood, I'm imagining. It sounds like that's going to be replaced also with wood, just be taller on the sides.
Yep, that's the plan.
Cool.
Same color too.
Thanks.
Should I send the model number in the chat?
The model number is on the Windows schedule. That's part of the packet.
Okay.
It's an Anderson 400. It's a nice.
Is that the
But
same
what
window
was
that the property owner's thinking about now?
Oh, sorry. The one in the architect drawing is not the same one.
Okay.
I sent the name of the one I was looking at in the chat.
I guess my only comments are I would support as presented. I have no.
Melissa, I apologize if you said this. Is it going to be the same color on the exterior?
Yeah, yeah, the red color on the window,
Okay.
and then the trim as well. And I will
Just
say too, the model that I found, it doesn't exactly match the size thing that I said. It is slightly larger. Just unless I did like a custom order of a window, right? They don't sell the exact dimensions. But it's as close as I could get to what's needed.
Are you
I would
talking
go.
like within an inch or two, or how close? Just curious.
Yeah, so the proposal was let me just do the math. It was 3 feet 10 inches, so that's 46 about by 48 plus 8, 56. And the model I found is 47 by 59.
what are the dimensions of this current window? Just looking at it, it looks like it's only maybe 2 feet tall.
Yep, it's 2 feet 4 inches
Okay.
by 58.
Okay. Yeah, I was just because I didn't see any before or after dimensions in the plans. It doesn't sound like anyone else is objecting to anything, and I don't have any objections. So I'm happy to make a motion to approve as presented, with the option of either using a sliding window or a casement, as long as it's within kind of the dimensions stated in these plans.
Second.
Hearing no
And I guess I'm
discussion.
clarifying, like, the width stays the same and we're allowing for an increase in height of the window.
All right. Unless there's any other discussion, Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Land,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Trevisano,
Yes.
and Ms. Marinucci.
Yes.
All right, Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Alyssa. We will, my office will follow up just to kind of confirm that you've been approved and, I guess make sure that the details you submitted yesterday match the approval, and we'll move forward from there. So we will be in touch. And thank you
All right.
again.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Next up, we have a schematic review. So we won't be taking motion on this, but this is HOC 24-35, 1950 West 26th Street in the Market Square Historic District. It was previously reviewed schematically December 5th, 2024. New construction of a boutique hotel. And I believe we have Amy Haney and Dan Whalen here. So Amy, just let me know when you want me to advance through the slides, please.
Yep. I'm
Dan,
going to hand it off to Dan. Sorry, Brant, I cut you off.
Sorry.
I'm going to hand it
Sorry.
off to Dan. And then our project designer, Brian Murch, is actually on today. So he's going to do the presenting with Dan this time.
Dan,
And
Brent, you're
sorry,
approving, right?
I'm recusing myself.
I have to also recuse Dan. And I don't know is this schematic?
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
schematic, yes. So
Okay.
there's no
Okay.
motion taken, but
Okay, great. So we will be zipped up.
I think I also have to recuse for the same reason.
yep. And
This is just a procedural question. I'm so sorry before we start. When this comes up for a final review to us, does this committee at full attendance, do we have quorum, assuming kind of the same members?
Yeah,
recused?
if you have quorum at the beginning of the meeting, that's considered quorum for the entire meeting. So even though I guess 4 of the 9 members will need to recuse themselves. Hopefully enough people will show up to that final meeting that it can be not like a 2-0 vote. Yeah,
Thanks.
This was so.
All right.
So I've got the 4 recusals noted, including Alex, who mentioned it before he left. So unless there's anything else, I will hand it over to the other Dan.
Thanks, Dan. Well, we've been through here before, so we're just kind of coming back. We did make some pretty substantial changes since last time we discussed this. I'll just kind of highlight quickly what we were proposing last time, and then we'll get into the changes. We previously had an 8-story building here on the site, and it contained parking on the 2nd floor, and a totally different design approach on what I'll call really the tower portion, floors 2 through 7, excuse me. And so we've revamped it. We've had a lot of internal dialogue. We've taken what this committee and what the Landmarks Commission feedback was last time around, and we think we have something pretty awesome to show you. We're excited about it. We think it will be highly interesting, exciting, and love to walk through it. So you can flip through the first couple pages, please, and land on the site plan aerial. Just reacclimating everybody with the site. It's the parking lot here at the corner of 26th and Lorraine. If you don't mind just going back one page there. Sorry. All right. corner 26 and Lorraine here. It's a surface parking lot adjacent to Market Avenue, next to Great Lakes Brewing, next to the 3 or 4 small 3-story buildings that head west on Lorraine, Yale State Barber College. Contextually, it's next to the 5-story Fries and Shealy condos and the 10-story United Bank building. The Market Clock Tower in the distance there is slightly taller than the bank building. And then Intro, which is off the page, is 9 stories, 115 feet. So what we're going to be showing is a 7-story building that neatly fits within sort of the context of that 5 to 10-story range at a new height of 7 stories. And so, we chopped the floor out. We've been working on some programming, and this is just the site context. So we can go to the next page. And we'll zip through these. These existing conditions are the same as last time. Lots of electrical poles, lots of overhead wires, pretty tattered and beaten concrete, and then that McLean Court brick road off the rear. Next slide. Same sort of thing here. So on 26 specifically there on the bottom right, we've got Great Lakes, one of their 2 loading areas where they have big heavy trucks going in and out 3 or 4 a day. And the trash enclosure and the shed where some of the ambassadors store some materials now. We're working with OCI to figure out where those folks will keep some of their miscellaneous gear once that goes away. But most importantly, that trash area, which is very typically spilling out into the right of way and into the sidewalk, will go away into an enclosed room at the rear of the building. So next slide. These are kind of technical and hard to read in this situation. So for the civil drawings, we'll kind of flip through and I'll just gloss over because it's much more easy to read in our sort of landscape and hardscape diagrams. So really this just shows the area that we are going to be improving and demoing. That little guardhouse that you saw, or the toll booth, along with some of these trash enclosures and a lot of the utilities around the site. Most specifically, we'll be burying and removing all the power lines on the Lorraine and West 26 frontages. So we'll show that in some of the renderings and the views that you'll see. But mostly, focuses on, especially since we have what I'll call the luxury of having a 3-sided, access to 28th Street as well. It gives us the ability to really shove all of the service uses and utilities at the rear of the building outside of the public realm and really maximize our impact on the pedestrian frontage and the areas where most of the people are, especially that view down Market Avenue, which is, as everybody knows, now a pedestrian street at all times. So kind of sweep through these next couple pages. You can kind of see the site plan here. Again, we're thinking about pavings and whatnot being a little bit more elevated than just your typical concrete. So, of course, working with city departments on some of that relative to stuff that's allowed in the right of way, and we'll try to push on that where they would want typical concrete. We're going to push for more pavers and landscaped areas. And then you can kind of see here off to the left that all the truck access and loading and trash and those sorts of things will happen directly through that appendage that goes out of 28th Street adjacent to Great Lakes' larger truck dock. And then 1 block north, Dave's has their truck dock as well on 28th. So the fact that it abuts the football field and not pure residential, I think is a benefit for us to being able to kind of cordon off some of these services that are not the prettiest types of things that you'd want to see. And with the length of that being a couple hundred feet, it also tucks them in, so they're really not right front center on that street either. You can keep going. Sorry, next page. Nothing's moving. Okay, keep going. I'll let you know when.
Is it frozen or is it advancing?
It's going. It seems to be going pretty slowly, but now we're on the program page, is what I see. So
yeah, is that where you want to stop, or?
Yeah, for now. So I'll sort of pass the baton to Brian. Brian's the lead design architect and principal at DLR Group, who is our project architect. But high level, the gross square footage, we've got a restaurant on level 1. We've got a rooftop rooftop bar that we're proposing. You can see the key count and some of the miscellaneous odds and ends, as well as our on-site parking. I will quickly talk about parking. Previously, we had a full level of parking at about 42 spaces, what we were netting. The cost to build that relative to the space count was exorbitantly expensive. You'll also recall probably that it just made the plinth of the building, the lower 2 floors, a bit disproportionate to what was happening above. And there was just a lot of questions about how we might screen that. So we've kind of taken what I'll call a very progressive approach to eliminate it entirely. We'll have some space behind the building in that drive lane that I was just walking you through. And we're working on other arrangements for valet parking and kind of overnight spaces with some adjacent property owners. And we're having good conversations and we feel good about it. So Brian, I'll tip it to you and we can start talking about the fun stuff.
All right, thanks, Dan. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, great. So the next slide kind of highlights the overall mass that's been revised from the previous scheme. I think probably the most important takeaway was just that pedestrian realm at the street frontage. Just thinking about more of a story and a half in terms of scale, just bringing that neighborhood feel to the base of the building. But then also how we step back the ballroom space just above that. So you see number 4 where our event space lives, and then wrapping those edges with an outdoor terrace. So really just creating some interaction, I would say, with that street frontage, not only with the lobby and the restaurant and the hotel, but then also thinking about how the building kind of cascades vertically. A couple other points of interest is the number 5 alluding to the guest tower. Number 6 is our rooftop venue. So trying to create a continuation of that architecture, you can see those pilasters reaching up and creating kind of a holistic approach, I would say, in terms of the massing and everything we're trying to do there. Next slide. So a little bit of a zoomed out version of our site. The red dimensions kind of alluding back to the setbacks that we have in and around the building. I think more importantly, the one that's 12 foot on the back along Lorraine or accessed off the Lorraine gives us a little bit of leeway. I think as we started to look at foundations for the building and those existing buildings, just giving ourselves a little bit of tolerance when we start construction. So not only does it provide a little bit of access back to our kitchen that lines the restaurant along Lorraine, it also gives us a access point, I would say, from our egress and things in and out of the building. So it did a couple things for us. The next slide shows a zoomed in version or a little bit enlarged version of that ground floor. I think the points to make here is kind of that front arrival. So we've got Market Avenue and how it terminates at the hotel. So really just building up that architectural terminus at the end of the street as our front door, as we invite guests in. Dan mentioned the enhanced paving that we're planning on doing along our sidewalks, creating a little bit of a welcome mat out in front of the hotel entrance. So you could see that little bit darker brown material, just highlighting not only the car arrival or the guest arrival, but also the entrance in and out of the hotel. On the corner of Lorraine, you can also see another version of that. So just how we independently brand our restaurant as its own venue within the hotel, having its separate entrance on that corner to really highlight that and create some activation and signage to go with it.
I'll chime in quickly too on the sidewalks and just kind of our approach to landscaping and hardscaping is, I think, especially as you guys walk around 25th Street, presumably you do, there's a lot of pinch points where patios or fences or trees kind of really make it difficult to walk in both directions because there's only 3 or 4 feet of clear. There's a lot of bricks popping out of the sidewalk. There's a lot of broken concrete. So there's a real focus here to pay attention to what we do with the hardscape. And the trees are going to be probably sunken below street into sunken holes so that we can just put tree grates and have them flush with the sidewalk to create just a little bit more width between the patios that we've got, some of the CPP required acorn lights, and just elements of getting pedestrian traffic in both directions. I talk about a lot in these types of meetings where you got moms with strollers, you've got people jogging, you've got people walking dogs, and when they're coming in both directions towards each other, you never want to have to like stop and scoot out of the way and like go into traffic or whatever it may be. And I see a lot of those conditions when I'm out and about in the neighborhood. And so in addition to that, having a good amount of trees, there are a handful of trees that wrap this parking lot today. So we want to put back as many as possible in our permanent condition. The other element I'll talk about is, and this will probably be more evident once Brian gets into the 3D stuff, is the second level terrace that kind of wraps our event space, not just activating ground level, but providing a little bit more activation on that second floor that wraps the what is the southeast corner of the building on Lorraine. And then a second patio there on the right side, kind of with 2 trees shown just off of that kind of notched out section of the building, where we'll just have additional lobby activation and a nice place to sit, probably a fire pit or 2 by the time that we come back for final approval. And then those 2 black boxes or gray boxes that you see on the right, far what would be the north of the plan, are transformers for all of the electrical equipment on 26th Street that we have to remove or that we want to remove. And so in lieu of all these wires and poles and various things, we'll be putting back 2 transformers. And our intention here is to completely shade them or shelter them from view as best as possible with some tall grasses, some additional trees, while still allowing access for CPP there off of the drive lane to the right, to service those as needed. And so necessary evil, obviously, but far, far better condition than what we've got today with all the electrical poles and wires going every which way. So.
Great points. The next slide covers a little bit of that hardscape and more of a 2-dimensional drawing. The next slide shows off some of the intent with the landscaping. The next slide details, you could probably skip that. And then the very next slide kind of gives you an idea of some of the accessories for the site. We're looking at the paving patterns, obviously, with those pavers, trying to create some borders, specifically at the front door, just where we can enhance things and create a little bit of hierarchy as people move through the site. And then also really bringing a residential character, I would say, to the building, softening it up with the landscaping. So having pots and planters that are movable so that we can rearrange them at different times of the year and highlight some of those areas in and around the building. The next slide really dives into the ground level floor plan. I think the biggest takeaway here is just activation. We know how important 26th and Lorraine is. All those colored boxes really representing the food and beverage, the hotel lobby. It's the social nature that comes with a hotel that becomes a hub for the community. So we really wanted to play that up in terms of how that extends out to the street frontage and just activates all of those elevations along those 2 streets. The next slide takes us up a floor. We talked about that 4,500 square foot of a ballroom space or an event space at this level. So right now we have a big 2-story volume, and you'll see it in some of the 3D representations where we have a stair that connects up to that pre-function, that lighter yellow color, and then that would take you into a ballroom, all wrapped by that outdoor terrace. So being able to look out over the street front and give people the opportunity to step outside. Opposite the ballroom space is guest rooms, as you can imagine. So this would be our amenity floor. So we do have a fitness center, and then thinking about the kings and queen rooms as they line that hallway that makes its way from left to right. The next slide shows the floor directly above, and as you can imagine, that ballroom level wants to have a little more volume to it. So we can't really fill in guest rooms on those 2 pieces, but they do make their way down the hallway. I think that's the next slide.
Might be some lag there. Hasn't clicked over yet.
Yeah. There it is. You could jump to the next one. Yeah. So typical guest room floor plate, double loaded corridor, kings and queens. You can see how we're enhancing the corners of the building with those larger guest rooms. So we've labeled them suites, but just thinking about, you've got extra windows, a little bit bigger guest room. So enhancing those corners and what we can do just to wrap the architecture and have some fun. The next slide takes us to, I believe, the very top floor of guest rooms. Maybe one more. So here we have a couple of those corner suites combined to create our presidential units. So you can see in scale, it just grows proportionately. We've also amenitized it with its own little outdoor patio. And then the last floor plan, the very next slide, shows our rooftop. In this case, the lighter purple color represents not only our rooftop lounge, but also a premium venue on the top floor that is a cocktail room. So we've got an opportunity to host separate parties or do different functions so they can work simultaneously. I think with the rest of this, it's providing food service for this level, some restrooms, and then storage and mechanical at the rooftop. The next slide starts to pick up on some of that inspiration. Dan, I'll let you kind of touch on some of this to start us.
Sure. Looking back at what we had before, maybe we were lukewarm on it, not just this board, but even internally. And I think, what we've gotten back to is wanting to do something that is contemporary in nature and it is its own thing, but it fits within the context of the historic district and really takes some notions of each and combines them together. And so what you'll see is my challenge to the architecture team was, how do we create something that's got a lot of like really nice streamlined gridded rigidity to the bulk of the building, but then that allows us to do some really fun stuff at the base and specifically with materiality while not completely making it out of left field and for no reason. And so we took nods from a lot of the stuff you see on screen and also just other districts that are maybe different in scale, but similar in terms of what they represent, like Meatpacking District in New York and West Loop of Chicago, where these are districts that are anchored either previously or still by a famous large-scale public market that have new and old mixed together. And you're seeing some of the most intriguing, exciting architecture in my view in the United States in some of these areas. And so it was kind of taking some of that, putting our own twist on it. You're going to see that we're proposing a pretty bold move at the base, kind of a la that bottom right image with a glossy glazed green brick. There's some of that in the neighborhood, specifically inside the West Side Market, with a lot of glazed terracotta, reminiscent, of that era and that specific architecture. And so I think there's ways for us to feel unique, timeless, and also just interesting and like really planting our flag as a place, not just in the neighborhood, but in the city of Cleveland, while maintaining this notion of character, neighborhood scale, and not feeling commercial, right? I think that's something that a lot of new buildings fail in, is they feel very commercial and very corporate, and we're trying to really pull that backwards, and I think what we're going to show you checks that box. So, Brian?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Dan really challenged us with just to be iconic in nature. We wanted to draw attention to the hotel and use it as the next layer to Ohio City and the West Side Market. So for us, it was just thinking about that ground level, what we did there, but then the root of, I would say, the materiality being that masonry, that handcrafted brick, giving the building a little bit of timelessness. We wanted it to fit into the context, but also have that residential feel to it. So using that as our predominant material, but then trying to really create depth. I think as the sun cascades over these facades throughout the day, just thinking about how the light's going to change the personality. And then when the hotel really activates in the evening hours, that the lights glow, the building has its own personality, separate from what it looks like in the day. I think a couple of these reference points that we looked at was, not only the depth of facades, but also the patterning and textures. Right now we're getting into those detail level drawings where we're looking at how we course the masonry, From a distance, it takes on a different personality than when you're up close to it. So there's those little discovered moments that you have as you pass by. Another fun one that we're getting into the detail on is that lattice brick detail. So, we talked about the terrace up at the ballroom space. And so, if you have a glass handrail, it goes back to maybe more of that commercial aesthetic that we were trying to, sway away from. So in that case, how do we create something that would allow breezes through? It gives us a little bit of a veiling to the people standing above, allowing us an opportunity to let the landscape kind of take over the building a little bit. So that's another fun one that we're looking into, just to help give the building a little bit of its own look and feel. So the next slide is that shot down Market Ave. We know that front door I mentioned earlier, it's like our big marquee moment. We wanted to enhance the district, everything that it represents, and then how do we extend Market to our hotel and invite people in? So the hierarchy being this box or this brick box that presents itself forward. I talked about that volumetric space, so it links itself back up to the ballroom above and the pre-function, but also this glowing beacon at the end of the street that really draws people in. You can see the materiality starting to take place. Like Dan said, that bold green brick is kind of an emerald color that gives it a little bit of a riff off of the landscaping and stuff as it highlights those entrances and softens it up. But at the same time, it really creates a contrast from the base or the podium to the tower just beyond.
Just some additional commentary to why and the material selection that we're leaning towards is really about warm materials. So it maybe reads a little bit white in terms of the upper brick, but I think it's going to be more of just a slightly off-white, more ivory, just slightly beige tint. There's some projection and kind of depth to how we're insetting certain areas with windows and even coursing around those windows. The green, I think, just again adds warmth, and it'll probably end up being somewhere deeper than emerald, but maybe not quite a dark hunter green. You could probably tie that to Forest City and some of the Cleveland history in that regard, but I think more than anything, it just feels anchored. It feels warm in an area that, because you're in a city, tends to lean towards heavy concrete and not a ton of green space on these commercial corridors. So I think it feels good in that context. I think we want to use canvas awnings similar to what you see kind of poking off both sides of the screen here with some of the smaller local storefronts on Market Ave with Great Lakes Brewing, to really, again, feel not like we're trying to do something that's contrived or too new. And again, kind of using that word commercial. We want to be boutique. We want to be authentic. I want to fit into the context of what's already going on here while making kind of a new statement.
Yeah, so the next slide takes us right up to the front door. Just thinking about that guest arrival moment where we set the tone for the interiors of the hotel. Again, the warmth of materials that Dan mentioned, just thinking about how we use wood in the canopy on the front door, just making it less commercialized and a little more having its own personality. We've investigated a lot into the branding of the hotel and the statement that we're gonna make both on the interior and exterior. So we're excited about all that. You can see some of those design threads weaving their way to the architecture. I think the other point that Dan had made earlier was just the breadth of that sidewalk. You see how the street trees and lampposts really offer a lot of, I would say, accessibility in and around the site. The cafe seating just outside the restaurant and the bar just beyond, closer to Lorraine. So again, just making it very interactive with how the inside of the hotel really conveys itself to the outside, helping activate that street. Anything else on this one, Dan? Do you want to jump to the last one?
No, we can go to the last one. And while we're doing that, I'll just chime in with, we're very using probably more of a darkened bronze as sort of the mullion color and some of the miscellaneous metals and detailing on this building, as opposed to like a harsh pure black or anything like that. So it's rendered out right now somewhere in between kind of a more brassy color and a dark bronze, and we'll investigate that as we go and kind of bring those final materials once they're selected the next stage. But I will say, you know, I certainly biased, but I love what we've got. I love what we're presenting. Last time around, I don't know that I loved it, and this time I think, quite frankly, it's hit a lot of the things that I was hoping it would. I do think it stands out while also blending in as much as that's possible, or fitting in as opposed to blending in. It's not too starkly different, and I think, you know, the fact that we are going all masonry at a time when I'm sure you guys can look around the city and see, you know, most buildings end up flat and they end up with hardy, or they end up with metal panel, because those are the things that work economically. We know we can deliver this within the economics of our budget, so that's another reason that we were confident enough to kind of create these photorealistic renderings, so that this stage of design at SD level, we feel really strongly about where we're tracking, and that, you know, hopefully you guys feel the same way. But I think also it allows you to feel a little bit better our true intent by taking it to this level of detail at this stage versus kind of just showing elevations and whatnot. So that's really all the context I have. Brian, you can take it the rest of the way.
Yeah, so just an overall shot, kind of capturing some of the drama that comes with the building compared to the massing model we saw earlier. So the next slide starts to point back to that materiality, you know, predominantly on the tower, which is that buff colored brick veneer, the wood soffits I mentioned, with both at the roof deck, but also at the entry canopy. Dark bronze as adding some contrast to that light and dark. So the window frames taking on that character, and then that glazed green brick that we're going to use along the base, just to give us a sense of reflection and a little bit of a twist on maybe just anything we have seen. The last image there shows a charcoal granite. So thinking about the harsh conditions in the winter when we're throwing salt on those sidewalks, or shovels trying to remove snow or deal with ice, protecting the base of the building, just making it as durable as we can for those different times of the year where we have to think about maintenance and how we clean things up. So the next slide just gives you a little bit of a glimpse or an idea behind the interiors of the hotel. I think we're really leaning into the fact that Cleveland is an industrial rooted city. So how do we find that counterbalance of that artistry that goes with it? So using the architecture of the structure within the building, some of the architectural moments, and then how do we layer in that artistic side of things, whether it's the artwork within the hotel or some of the materiality that we lace the spaces with, but just thinking about that guest experience, creating those curated moments that really keep people coming back and give us a great place to hang out while we're in Ohio City. I think the next few slides are our technical drawings. So just looking at a full set of elevations. Showing some of those heights. I think the height to our roof right now is indicated at 88 feet and 8 inches. So using those masonry dimensions to hit our rooftop. And then overall, just the composition of materiality. The next slide picks up a little more about the section of the building. So how we're stacking things. This cuts through that ballroom space. So there is a transfer beam there to help move those columns out of the way for our big event space, and how we can create some flexibility there. And then that's the next slide is the end. So we'll turn it back over to the group for comments or questions. Appreciate everybody's time.
All right, since our chair had recused herself, looks like Angelo, it is you and Margaret Did Margaret have to step off?
Yeah, she put in
Superman-
the chat that she had to leave.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. I'm like, yeah, they said have too heavily on you, Angelo, but you're the only committee member who's here and hasn't recused. I'm happy to chime into the conversation if you want, if that's helpful at all. Just but yeah, I'll let you go ahead with your thoughts.
I'll say that I think this new conceptual plan is really excellent. I think the renderings are really helpful to kind of understand the massing, especially, and even the materials. I think the pedestrian, the building wall, the pedestrian experience, that zone right there it's a full correction. I think the last plan that had it set back with large columns was the opposite of this, and this is very good. I like the viewpoint looking west along Market Avenue. I think kind of pulling in those green tones from even those like mature trees in front of those businesses there. And I really like the color of that first floor, that green. I think you should probably stick with natural tones. Not that you should. I think it's a good selection what you have rendered here, because it really, I think, meshes well with kind of the natural red of the brick and just the green from the existing trees that are there. So I guess just overall, like it looks ambitious and also complementary. I think it's just a good proposal right here. I did have a question where this rendering, just looking here on that, I guess this would be the south elevation. It looks like there's 4 columns of windows. And in some of the in at least one of the elevation drawings, maybe on page 33, it looks like there's 4 columns, but that rightmost column of windows is only like 3 stories. But in the rendering, it's rendered all the way up to max height. If we could just get a clarification, what is the actual plan? Because I think the rendering looks really good. So
Yeah, no, Angelo, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's right now those suites, those guest rooms, as you can imagine, are evolving. I think we've had conversations of, okay, where do the bathrooms go? Do we have windows in the bathrooms? Maybe, maybe not. Yeah, what scale? So based on the elevations, we show it's a solid infill panel just because it was probably unknown at the time. But then in the renderings, we just liked that glass appearance. And so it's just the balancing act of design versus constructability versus planning. So we're kind of in the throes of that next level of laying out a few of those things to really figure out how we end cap the building. So
yeah, my opinion is I like what we've been tracking kind of with the single window panes on the long dimensions, and the rhythm of the 4 windows in the rendering versus kind of the 3 bays that you see here in the elevation feels a little better. But to Brian's point, it's just working out some of the technical constructability aspects of that. And, being that there's columns that would be mid-span in some of those other, or in the rendered version, it's not the end of the world if you see a column necessarily through the window. I think it's kind of pretty once in a while, especially because we are talking about a timber building. And in that regard, I think it's just, like he said, trying to detail out, is it a restroom? Is it a living area? Is it a bedroom? And how do we, work through some of that? But I think the preference is to do the 4 bay versus the 3 if we can swing it.
yeah.
cool.
We love the
thanks for the
rigor.
presentation.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
No, you could see how rigorous the grid is. And I think it's as you turn the corner, you always kind of bump into these situations where, the rules start to get broken, but how do you maintain that same aesthetic? So I think, going back to being an architect and understanding that it's, like Dan mentioned, just something that's in development.
Yeah, I was just finishing by saying it looks great. If this were for a vote, I would vote yes. So good luck with your kind of future progress on this.
Thanks for your feedback.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for not recusing yourself. So we have feedback.
Yeah, and since everyone else has recused themselves, and Angela has additional comments, I guess just from a staff perspective, I guess I would echo a lot of what Angela said. I mean, we haven't really discussed this as staff much, but my reaction to it is much more favorable than that first round. I thought there was a lot of interesting and fun things going on in that first proposal, but as far as fitting into the neighborhood, this just really, it's much more contextual. It fits into the district both in scale and materiality and all that. So I think Amy and Brian have both done a great job under your direction, Dan. Um, I yeah, I think even the texture and colors of the masonry. I think having that first floor offset as a different color. I think that green could be really stunning. Um, with the upper floors, I think, yeah, like you said, we want to avoid, a pure white. But looking around, there are some terracotta buildings. You've got Friesen and Schuyler right across the way. You've got I don't even know who's in that building right now, but the one right across the street used to be the #1 Cup building right across the street from Friesen and Schuyler on 25th. So there are examples of that kind of feel. But I think I would, yeah, knock it down and stay with that ivory, a little less glaring on a sunny day. But I think you guys are heading in a great direction, and I really appreciate you guys taking into account all of the comments that this committee and the Landmarks Commission made last time around, and really, you obviously paid attention, you took it to heart, and I think this committee and the commission will both be appreciate that, and I think view your project favorably. It looks like it's heading in the right direction.
Thank you.
So unless Angela, do you have anything else, or I guess, do you guys feel like you've gotten enough feedback? I guess even if it's just initial reactions, they seem to be a little different from last time.
Yeah, no, I feel good. Like I told you, I feel also just great about what we're presenting, and I think that goes a long way as well. And yeah, when we go next week to the commission, and we'll have, I'm sure, a tons of feedback of all types. But no, I honestly wish that more people were able to opine and give their feedback.
Yes.
But hey, sometimes it just comes with the nature of the business. So I understand.
A lot of partners, a lot of people, I think, want to see this one happen. So, all right. Well, thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Well, yeah, my office will reach out with next steps, and we'll get you on the commission agenda soon.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Last but not least, we have case HOC 25-19, 3606 Clinton Avenue, the Ohio City Historic District. I believe we have Patrick here, who is the homeowner, and he wants to make some, I guess, do some renovations to his home. I will say, again, from like a staff level, this is one that, I think we would have, been able to handle administratively, because it seems like the work is, generally appropriate. Might have been a little back and forth clarifying details and all that, but Patrick, yeah, I think it's one of those ones you guys should see, just to kind of highlight what a good project looks like, and as a reminder of some of the stuff that goes on that you guys don't always get to see in our every meeting. And then Patrick put together a very nice presentation. So without me blabbing anymore, I'll hand it over to Patrick. Just let me know when you want me to click through the slides, please.
Okay, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'll go on video for 1 second, even though I hate that. Hi. I recognize some of you from the neighborhood, so thank you all for having me on here today. First of all, just to make sure, can everyone hear me okay? Okay, great. Thanks. So I am the homeowner, as Daniel mentioned, of 3606 Clinton. I've owned the house for about 2 years, and I have been sort of tackling some projects that I can handle. But one thing that I wanted to sort of present to this group is the exterior changes that I'm planning, and in discussing with some of the landmark staff, it seemed like it was a good idea to present sort of my full vision, even though it's probably a longer term project for me to actually accomplish everything that is in this presentation. If you could go to the next slide, please. My house is a main obsession of mine. So I've done a lot of research on it and have a lot of nerdy information that I could share. I'll try not to bore you too much with that. I think that the primary thing that's probably relevant for this group is, in my research, I've pretty confidently uncovered that the majority of the house that's visible today is a primary house built in 1881 with an addition on the west side, first floor, likely added around 1883. So this map is showing the house that existed across both east and west halves of sublot number 128 prior to being subdivided. My house now sits on only the east side of 128, and there's a separate home, my neighbor's home, on the west side. Next slide, please. This map from 1892 was the first that I could find in my research that shows the two separate homes on the two separate halves of sublot number 128. And the addition that I highlighted in the photo is my research is leading me to believe that is likely from 1883, around the time that my home was purchased by Oscar Townsend. And I, again, will try not to talk too much about this, but if you go to the next slide, I just have a little bit of information about the Townsends that I found really interesting. So Oscar Townsend was a railroad mogul, and he and his wife Elizabeth lived on Millionaires Row in a house at 7 and 5 Euclid, and I was able to find this engraving at the bottom left of that home. And they purchased my home for their son, J. Fred Townsend, and his wife, Annie Marie Townsend, for them to start their own family in. And I found that they're all buried in Lakeview Cemetery, not far from Daffodil Hill. Went to see their graves, and it was just really cool to learn. And this picture at the bottom center is a photo I found of Annie Marie Townsend toward the end of her life when she was applying for a passport. It's from roughly, I think, 1929. So that's just a little bit of info. And I think that mostly the Townsend family, again, is sort of responsible for the majority of what my house is today. A lot of the interior detail and what you see of the house. There's sort of pre-1881 information that I'm still trying to figure out. But I think for this committee, mostly relevant that we're talking about a house that's from the early 1880s. Next slide, please. This just shows present day where it is on the map. So it's a little bit east of the intersection of West 38th Street on Clinton Avenue on the north side of the street. And this is the survey that I was provided when I purchased the house. Next slide, please. These are just the current condition, taken about a week ago, of the front facade, the rear facade. And next slide, please. The east and west facades. And I don't know if I'm the only person who is seeing this, but I see like a gray box that's covering part of the slides, but it might just be me. Do other people see that? Okay.
I'm sorry, are other people seeing that?
Yes.
Which part of the slides?
It's like a portrait-oriented gray rectangle on the left-hand side. On this particular, oh, there it is. Okay.
Okay. Was that on all the slides?
It was, but it wasn't really blocking any sort of important info yet. But it was covering the west facade of the house. It wasn't on the slides of previous presenters.
Okay,
only
weird. Sorry.
no, you're fine. This is the west and east facade of the house, and I just also wanted to note that the west facade is, there's just a few feet between my house and my neighbor's house, and the west facade of my house is located sort of inside her fenced-in yard. So it really is very foreshortened when you're looking at it from the street, as you can see in the picture. Next slide, please. This is sort of a list of my full sort of hopes and dreams of what I'm hoping to accomplish with these longer term projects, and I'll go into the details of them on the subsequent slides. If you could advance, please. The first is the replacement of 9 vinyl windows. So thankfully, there are 12 original wood windows that are still in good working order, and I've been in the process of working with a window restorer to have them rechained and get them back up and running. So I'm very grateful to have those. But there are 9 vinyl replacement windows from the 90s the 1990s that are in my house that I would like to replace, and 2 of them are street facing in the gable on the 2nd floor of my house. Those are highlighted with the yellow arrow. Next slide, please. After doing some research and talking with some other neighbors, what I'm proposing for the replacements for these windows are the Marvin Ultimate Double Hung G2 windows, which have an aluminum exterior, which I'm proposing in the evergreen finish, and then a wood interior. And I would also be looking at replacements that don't have any divided lights to match the existing original wood windows that are on my home. Next slide, please. This is, so the next sort of category of renovation is restoring the front facade. So my entire house is covered in composite siding, and sort of dealing with all of that is not something that's is feasible for me to accomplish anytime in the near future. But I think that there would be a big visual impact to addressing it just on the front facade. And sort of just painting the rest of the house, painting the composite siding that's already there. But on the front facade, there is some damage around one of the windows that's on the 1st floor that exposes 5 1/4 inch drop siding that I have no reason to believe it's anything other than the original wood siding of the house that I would really like to expose. So I'd like to take the composite siding off the front of the house, repair that, do that paint scraping that was referenced in earlier in the meeting, and repaint that. I also would want to address the casing around the windows on the 2nd story and the gable have been covered with metal, and it seems like they've been shrunken. They really don't match the proportions of the casing on the windows on the 1st floor, which are significantly wider and wood. There also is quarter round trim applied to the trim down on the 1st floor around the windows that I would like to remove. It's also around the door. I think it was just added to sort of raise the profile above the composite siding that wouldn't be necessary if I removed the wood siding. I mean the composite siding, sorry. And there's like a really tall flashing above my porch roof that I would like to sort of have be a normal size and be less distracting as part of this renovation. There's also a storm door over my front door that has a smaller opening than the door itself, so it sort of is weirdly proportioned, and I would want to remove that. Next slide, please. It hasn't I don't know if it's just me, but it has. Okay, there we go. So I just, as part of my research, I was sort of looking for similar houses from similar times and came across these 2. The one in the top left, I found in the same book that was where I found Oscar Townsend's house on Millionaires Row, just sort of a similar-ish house. And then I also found this engraving, or lithograph, I should say, from 1872 with the view from the Kentucky Street Reservoir Promenade Walk that shows a house that is on Clinton Avenue. It predates my house, so it can't be my actual house, but it's very similar and does not have really any ornamentation. And the ornamentation on other homes in the lithograph is sort of clearly articulated. So my thinking is that I would leave the house sort of as is in terms of ornamentation, very plain. But I certainly would be open to and hoping to sort of discover original detail while I'm doing this work and restore that if possible. So if I were, for instance, to find scalloped detail in my gable under the composite siding, I would absolutely restore that and would not want to be removing that detail. Next slide, please. Oh, I can't see the presentation anymore. Is that just me? Not just me. Okay.
Maybe we lost Dan.
All right. Yeah, I apologize. So I'm trying to. Can you guys see that?
It looks like it's coming up, but not yet.
Yeah, I
I
apologize.
see the lithograph slide.
Yeah, they're rerunning all of our network cables and so it's
Okay,
been a rough
it's
day.
back up.
Okay.
Thanks, sorry about that. It's always fun. Next slide, please. So the sort of next chunk of restoration is sort of related to the front facade as well, but I want to restore the porch. So the porch ceiling looks to be in great shape, so I only plan to paint that. But there are replacement brackets on the porch, and I've also seen the same exact brackets looking very conspicuous on other people's homes in the neighborhood. So I think there must be a sort of common replacement from some period of time. But the only historic photo I was able to find of my house was through the library's resources, and they had this photo that was really of my neighbor's house, but included part of mine from 1963, and it shows sort of smaller brackets on the porch that I've also seen very similar brackets that appear original on other houses in the neighborhood. So I would be looking to replace the existing brackets with hopefully salvaged ones that I could find, maybe Rebuilders Exchange or something. If not, have them rebuilt to sort of match this likely original bracket that was on the porch. There's also just damage to the posts on the porch that I would want to repair. The upper portion of the posts does appear to be original, so I definitely leave them intact and just sort of repair as needed, like the damage that you can see in the one photo on the left. Next slide, please. The porch floor and porch steps were recently added by the previous owner and are really not doing any visual favors to the house. So I would like to replace the porch floor with a tongue and groove floor to be a little bit more accurate historically, but I also did want to note that the joists of my porch floor they run perpendicular to the front of the front facade, which is not typical for houses in the neighborhood. So the floor would run parallel to the facade of the house, and I'm proposing, like, asking permission, I guess, to leave it that way rather than have to rebuild the foundation of the porch. and only replace the porch floor. And then I would like to replace the steps as well with something that just looks nicer, and the railing with also something that looks nicer. And I added a note that I'm looking for guidance here because I'm not 100% sure in terms of the steps and railing what would be appropriate. But I just definitely want something that looks better than what's there now. I guess the way these work is that the comments are at the end. So next slide, please. I would also be painting the exterior of the house. I selected these colors from the Ohio City Historic Preservation color palette. The classical or colonial gold, excuse me, would be what I'm proposing for the primary color of the house. The evergreen is that color from the Marvin windows that I would also be painting the existing wood window trim to match. And then accent colors of classical white and rookwood amber for you know, the porch brackets and some other details just to sort of add pops of color. Next slide, please. I luckily don't need a new roof right now, but was including this as, you know, something that I would be looking for in the future. I have looked at appraisal, like historic appraisal cards of my home, and it seems that it originally had a slate roof. And it doesn't seem very practical, mostly financially, I guess, to have a slate roof, but I have been looking into sort of composite slate shingles, and I have a friend who works in historic preservation in Louisiana and pointed me to this product. So I'm sort of interested to see what this group thinks about synthetic slate roofs, and or if there's any other sort of recommendations you would have for that. The presentation went away again, but I think there's only one more slide, which is just about my gutters. So the gutters are really visually distracting, not in great shape, and in very conspicuous, inelegant configurations around my home. So as part of the renovation, I would want to replace them with something that is just more aesthetically pleasing, but also historically appropriate. And I really just don't know anything about historic gutters. So I would also be sort of looking for some guidance for what might be some appropriate options for those as well. I think that's the last slide, but there might be one more that I'm forgetting about. Oh, right, sorry. I am also proposing, I forgot about it because it's probably very far in the future for me, but there is this sort of single story part of the back of my house that is sort of dark because of its proximity to the neighboring factory. And I am proposing adding up to 3 skylights. I'm not sure if I actually want 3, but I guess I would be asking for approval for up to 3. And I just did a sort of a walk down Clinton between West 29th and West 45th to see sort of what was going on with other people's skylights, and identified some that are much more visible from the street and much closer to the front of the house. Because there is no home on the east side of my home, sort of the whole east facade is very visible from the sidewalk. So you would, from certain angles, be able to see these skylights sort of at an angle on the roof, which is highlighted in that yellow box on the bottom right. And I think that that is actually the last slide.
So that one seems to be the actual last one, yes.
Okay, great, thank you. So thank you for your time. And yeah, if you have any questions or recommendations to point me in the right direction, I'm very open to them.
I'll just, okay, Nia, you are still here. I can't see who's in the meeting anymore.
I'm still here. I just couldn't find my unmute button. Thank you, Patrick. This is super well thought out. This makes our job easy. So thank you for having such an appropriate approach to your home. I have a couple thoughts. To be clear, I don't have any opposition to anything you've proposed, but because you asked for potential feedback, I'm happy to give a couple of my initial thoughts. One is that I'm curious if your house perhaps could have been a little bit of a Gothic revival inspiration, similar to the one that's on 31st, that's also yellow, or not also, but is yellow, since you're pursuing yellow. And that could be stylistically a direction to go. Maybe that would look like 2/2 windows instead of the clear double hungs like you're proposing, but certainly not a, I'm not suggesting this as like this is what you should do, just food for thought. As it seems like you're also interested in kind of the historic pursuit here. The other thought is it could be reminiscent of it, the massing itself could be also a Greek revival cottage, which we have several examples of. Both are lesser common styles in the neighborhood, but both could be on this type of massing. I don't know if you said this in your presentation, so forgive me if I missed it. I don't know that the front porch in any capacity would have been original, but or part of some like the series of kind of modifications, but I am not. You have the evidence from the 1960s photo that would be a great direction to take kind of like the column and motif details from. I don't think there's any problem with running the decking material to work with the joists. Actually does happen quite a bit in my experience. If you go down the block to my house on Clinton, we did it that same orientation a long way, and we just kind of mitered the finished boards to like cap it off on the front and side, and I think it looks great. We used tongue and groove composite decking from TimberTech, which is a great material to replace porch flooring. It mimics the historic porch like scale and size, but it's in a composite material if it's something you want to consider. It's a little bit pricey, but it's definitely more appropriate look than like decking because it's meant to be for porch application. I'm trying to think of anything else specifically that you called out. I don't mind the skylights at the rear when you get to that point. Was there anything else you wanted specific items on that I'm forgetting?
I guess for the so I was hoping that a non-wood sort of alternative for the porch floor would be an option. Your porch does look great, so I would be happy to use that. For the steps themselves, like is any like they would essentially be rebuilt. The previous owner built these like extremely shallow steps because there was he had a relative who like needed a shallower step in order to get up them. So they're not sort of even normal step proportions. So would it just be like rebuilding? Like what would they look like? I guess.
I think you could reconstruct them to a more comfortable rise and run and effectively kind of have the same thing. I don't see a reason why not. And we put the same decking material, topping, I should call it topping, onto the steps on our side porch if you look down, you know, or want to come see it. The other thought is that like our late friend Tim Barrett had put on his little Gothic revival cottage on Whitman, he did like these long like platform style steps, which were really cool. And I don't know that that was like necessarily a strict historic interpretation of the porch, but it was a beautiful and interesting way to treat it. That could be up for consideration if you're familiar with on Whitman towards the 44th side on the south side of the street.
Is it like 3 houses away from 44th?
Yes, the little yellow
cottage. Yeah. It's one of my favorite houses in the neighborhood. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think I mean I guess that ties in again another yellow one, but I'm like that. I do wonder if there's something to that. It could be that from that massing. It could also have been your house could have also just been like really devoid of detail, like the lithograph shows, and it was just a little tiny workman's cottage. That's possible too. I would say let the evidence that you may discover guide you, and if not, then I don't think what you've proposed. I think what you've proposed is appropriate. So, yeah, I think you could be creative if you want to with the steps. You could just straight up rebuild them and top them in the same manner, and it would be fine and appropriate.
Great, thanks. I do have a question about the like sort of adding detail, because my first inclination was to sort of add all of this detail, but it felt sort of, because I couldn't find actual evidence for my specific home that was there, it felt like I would be sort of inventing it, even if it would be historically sort of within the realm of possibility. But there are, like, I love that house that you mentioned. There's a house like on Fulton that it's like the street that I turn on to go to Phoenix, but I don't know what street it is. But it has this like vertical detail on the facade, and it's very Gothic revival and totally beautiful. And I would love to do something like that. But I feel weird sort of inventing something if the house isn't like specifically telling me that it's there. But I don't know. Like, I guess, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I think another colleague who's not on this board, but in the restoration realm of the neighborhood, is an architect named David Ellison. And something I've learned from David, he's a strict classicist, and he would say that we should not be adding detail with, I can't remember how he phrased it, without conjecture, or something like that. And I'm paraphrasing, and he's obviously not here to say. So I would say if you wanted to take a strict classicist, I don't know if that's the right word, approach, then no, you shouldn't be adding detail unless you have strict historic evidence to show that that was the detail. You have that 60s photo, so I think it's safe to say there is some detail or some reason to think that there could have been more detail here. But I also, like I said at the beginning, personally don't know or think that the porch in this iteration or porch at all could be original. So take it or leave it. I personally, if you're not going crazy with the gingerbreading, I think that if it's done in a refined way, then I don't necessarily mind adding a little bit more detail to a house. But Dan, what do you think?
So I think you're right. Yeah, I would guess that this house, I think honestly, looking at it, it looks more like it would fall into that kind of workman's cottage. Might have elements of Greek revival, maybe some Gothic vibe, but generally it was built to be, an efficient, functional house. And we see a lot of this vernacular style in the neighborhood. It's, that kind of 2/3, window, their bay setup. So the porch was probably added later. I'm guessing that underneath those kind of squared bases of the porch, you're going to find a more rounded, like turned kind of spindle column that goes all the way down. They probably boxed it in at some point. Like Nia said, the conjectural stuff, you can go either way. You could be a strict literalist, or you can, you can get out of control with it. I think balance is what's important. Like on Tim's cottage there on Whitman, most of those, like those porch elements, most of the elements of the exterior were conjectural because he didn't really have strong evidence of what was originally there. So he kind of, like the porch columns on that house are stacked one by, there's a 4x4 base in it, and then it's just stacked out, 1x6, 1x4, 1x8, so that it creates the feel of something more round than it really is. So I think that there's a way to use modern materials and kind of make references to potential historic elements without confusing anyone and making someone think, oh, that's original to the house. Like, it should look like it was obviously added later and it's a new element. But the reference, like if you're adding brackets, it can be a modern bracket, like that's brand new and with modern materials, but it still gives that initial impression of, oh, this fits in, this is something old, but not trying to confuse anyone with thinking that this was originally put on the house in 1891.
Okay, makes sense.
And then I guess, just since you mentioned gutters too, with the porch being added later, I would guess that originally the porch didn't have gutters on it at all. Half round copper is always kind of, what would have been probably used back in that time period, but gutters are you know, I think a later invention to a lot of houses in the neighborhood. So they cover up a lot of nice, bracket ends or uh, like roof truss ends and that sort of thing. And then, yeah, I think, if it did have gutters originally, it probably would have been like a half round copper strap gutter. Um, and so, thinking about something along that line, at least for the front, I think could be a nice look. They're unfortunately kind of one of those necessary evils. If you don't want the down, you might want to check code, but I think there are ways you can kind of divert the water down so that it sort of splashes out and dissipates without all going straight down into one downspout that look a little more natural or kind of fit in with the house a little better, look more like a decoration than just a functional downspout.
Okay, cool.
I also think that in just 2 cents as well on the when you go to pursue the roof, I love that you found the evidence of the slate being there at some point. I don't think you need to go as far as the composite slate if you don't want to. Totally fine if you do. I just, from a cost standpoint, I think dimensional shingle would be just fine on this house as well.
Okay.
I know how this stuff adds up, and I would very much rather see you spend the money on those beautiful Marvin windows. But thank you. That's the best option if you're going to spend it. That's the best. That's a great one to spend it on. So
Okay.
I don't think it needs to be that by any means.
I'll just jump in. Great presentation to the homeowner on this. Just some procedural questions. I'm assuming the building permit has already been submitted, which is why you're here.
No,
And
I
no,
actually
okay.
don't know
Okay.
anything about that process.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So I think just like procedurally, we can only approve, like any approval that we give is only 12 months.
Okay.
Maybe it can be extended by staff or something. So for the really long out stuff, we're just all vibing here today.
Okay.
The
Sorry, I
other
didn't
question I had was, I was wondering if maybe Dan and maybe Nia or Whitney can take a look at that siding. When I initially saw it, I clocked it as a material that is not composite. I clocked it as a material that might need some careful removal.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that would be my knee-jerk reaction, is that it's probably asbestos siding that's common. Early 1900s, you see it pop up a lot through the 40s,
And yeah, and just the way it's cracking.
Yes, yeah, that brittleness. That would be that's my first assumption looking at it. Yeah.
I don't really, just to be transparent, I don't really know what composite siding is. It said composite siding on the appraisal card that I found. So
technically, it's composite siding.
Okay.
Asbestos. It's basically a cementitious siding that has asbestos fibers in it that were great for insulation, great for fireproofing, great for everything. Just kill a lot of people. So be very careful when you're working with it. I would say, get a respirator or something. If you hire someone, make sure that they're certified to handle the stuff. If you're, it's one of those things, you could have a company probably pull that off, in one day. They could get the front cleared off, but the process that they have to use with like double bagging and ventilation and all this, I mean, it could be quite a process. Basically, all the OSHA regs kick in if you're hiring someone to do that, and they're hiring other people. You can safely do it yourself, and then you don't have all the OSHA regs to deal with. There are still some EPA and environmental things to be aware of, but yeah, I think get some pricing on that and decide how long you want to spend. If it's worth a weekend in a Tyvek suit with a respirator. But however you do it, do treat it with care.
Yeah.
It's perfectly safe as long as it's just sitting there. It's when it gets broken, like that photo on the upper left, that it becomes more dangerous.
Okay. Noted.
Yeah, I just wanted to flag that. because it doesn't sound like you've started yet. And then the other thing, just like water is, in my mind, the primary killer of all of our old houses and structures. So like, it's great that you're thinking about water. And right now it looks like that one little downspout is kind of right in the middle of that porch, kind of on the left side of your porch stairway. I'm imagining most of the water's coming off your left side of your house, just based on how your roof is looking. So maybe kind of once you hire like a gutter person, or if you want to do this yourself, I'd probably slope it down towards the left and right sides and put downspouts there if
Okay.
you can. I don't know if your property has stormwater. I don't know. Is that your lot line, that fence there?
Yes.
I don't know how you'd hook in, or if you just kind of dump it into your landscaping plantings there, but
It just dumps into the
yeah,
landscaping.
okay. Yeah, other than that, great research. When you get this ball rolling, I know this is going to turn out to be a great project, and you're totally right. This is a level of research you could be a top national detective. This is all really good. Good luck with everything, and feel free to come back. Dan will be helpful, and we'll try and be helpful too.
Yeah, and Patrick, you've come to the right place to nerd out on this kind of stuff. So
I mean, it's just
we like
free
to do
advice,
that.
which is great.
Yeah. And yeah, it's kind of to Angela's point. You know, there's a lot of steps to your project. You know, we don't expect you to put them all in one.
Oh no, you froze.
Dan, we lost you.
But in this, I'm almost with the. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes.
you're time traveling.
Is that better? Okay. Like the way we do with the cultural gardens, like you come in and submit your master plan, and then as you get the elements of it come through, we can sign off on the permit applications for those without having to go through a whole review process. So it sounds like everybody's comfortable with what's being proposed and is I guess say greatly in favor of it. So I'd say probably as these pieces, parts, you know, as you get ready to do any element of it, you know, apply for your permit, and my staff can talk you through that process, and then we'll we might ask you for some details. We might have some back and forth. My staff can be a resource to you as far as figuring out those details, if that's helpful. But yeah, you don't feel like you have to apply for or do it all at once. We'll, if the committee's comfortable with it and recommends a recommendation, then I think we'd handle this more like a master plan, and then deal with each little element as it came up more administratively.
Okay. And just for my information, you said I could someone could walk me through the process, but like does each, for instance, the thing that is not just aesthetic is the windows on the second floor, the four of the vinyl windows are truly broken and I need to replace them. So would like there would be a permit for the windows and then there's a permit for something else, or if this is not the right forum for that?
Yeah, you can apply for it, and we can talk offline if that's easier if people want to get rolling. But just in general, you can apply for a general construction permit and include, you know, any number of things. You know, you could do, you know, your windows and porch repair. It's just how much information you have to provide building and housing. If it's just
Okay.
windows, that's an easy permit. Since, you know, you've told us what window you're going to use. We can sign off on that. No one in building and housing really is going to give you much grief about windows. If you say, you know, windows and rebuilding the porch steps, then you're going to kind of hit a wall in building and housing, because they're going to say, where are your drawings for the steps? What do those look like? What's the rise? Let's, you know, make sure they meet code. So, you know, there's definitely we can email and kind of figure out what, you know, help you with like the phasing of your projects as far as applying for permits and what makes sense to kind of package together and all that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
So does anyone want to make a motion? I believe.
Is it just Angelo and Whitney and I left?
Whitney and Angelo.
So one of
either
you has
want
to
make a
make
motion?
it.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
All right, thank you. All right, Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Miller, about Mr. Trevisano,
Yes.
and Ms. Marinucci.
Yes.
All right, Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it.
Yep, thank you, Patrick. And my office will be reaching out with kind of next steps. And like you said, we can help you through the permit process.
Awesome. I will need that help. So thank you.
You're not the first. All right, thank you.
Thanks so much for your time.
Yep,
Have a great
thank
day.
you. Madam Chair, that is the last agenda item we have for today. Our next meeting is scheduled for May 15th.
Great. Sounds good. With that, we'll call today's Historic Ohio City Design Review Advisory Committee meeting adjourned.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.